Hey guys, I'm Eli from Historic Brattonsville, and today what we want to talk to you about is from field to clothes, sheep are what we wear. Today we're going to take an in-depth look on the different steps it takes to turn wool into clothes, and I think you'll find it pretty remarkable.
The first step, we have to shear our sheep. We use a set of hand shears to shear the wool off the sheep. Don't worry, they don't mind, and we leave enough wool for them to stay warm.
Okay guys, so we finished shearing our sheep, and now we have to move on to the next process, which is we have to wash it. Just like your clothes are dirty, we have to wash your clothes. Same thing with wool. It has a lot of grime and dirt to it. It also has, you see that yellow in there? That's lanolin, and it makes a mess if you try to spin it without cleaning this. And what that is that's just merely sheep produce it, and what they do is it offers some waterproof, and it also offers them a little bit of protection against insects. But we want to be able to get that off. Now, modern day, you hear a lot about lanolin used in skincare products. Same exact stuff, and the way you would do it was, you would boil a pot of water like we have here, and usually want to try to get up around the 140, 150 degree mark. We'd wash that wool and let it soak in there, and then we'd pull it out, and that would leave us with water and lanolin. Now the way we capture that lanolin is just boil the rest of the water off until we had the final product, which is lanolin. The good part about lanolin is once you capture it and once you process it, it keeps indefinitely, so you don't have to worry about it going bad. But what we're going to do is we're going to wash this wool. Now what we'll use is a little bit of soap. We're going to use lye soap that actually comes from pig fat and lye from ashes. And we're gonna just let this stuff soak. And so I have a smaller scale here. You're gonna want a bucket to actually let it sit and soak in, and then you're gonna run a rinsing bucket. Now you want to make sure that these things are the same temperature. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this water and I'm gonna pour a little bit in here. And then we're going to pour a little bit in here. And the reason why we want to keep it the same temperature is because we do not want to, what they call felting wool. If you ever had a sweater that you put accidentally in the wash machine and then the dryer and it come out and you didn't see any fibers, it almost looks like this hat here, like felt wool. And the reason why we don't want that is because that allows these fibers to bond really, really tight together. If you look microscopically, the wool has almost scales on it, and when we wash it and also agitate it, it opens up those scales and it bonds to that fabric. Bonds to the other pieces of wool, and so they get tightly wound up together, and it makes it nearly impossible to spin. And so that's the reason why we don't want to really do too much. So we'll soak it in here. Now another thing too is to keep it from felting. Not only do you want the water temperature about the same, we also don't want to agitate it. We don't want to just push on it and just ruffle those fibers up, because with the soap and being in water, it'll open those scales up and cause it to felt even more. So we'll let this soak, for 15-20 minutes. And at that point, we'll take it out and we'll put it in a rinsing tub, and we'll let it sit there just gently, trying to get some of that soap off of it and lanolin. And then it's usually probably smart to go ahead, and what we do is we'd let this dry out and then we'd soak it again. And every time we soak it, it's just getting more of that imperfections out, because we want a very clean product when we go to our next process, which will be carding wool. So now that you know this process, let's see what we're talking about when we talk about carding wool. And now we have to turn around the next process, which you'd think would be to spin this wool, but the problem is all these fibers are going in different directions. So first off, what we have to do is get them all going in the right direction. What we would use is, and this job was, a lot of kids did this job. These are called carding paddles. And what we do is we run our wool across those carding paddles and we push them together. And what this is doing is getting all of our fibers in one direction. Much like when you wake up in the morning, your hair is all crazy. So we use a comb or a brush and we brush those hairs all in the same direction. Well, that's what carding paddles does. It pulls all those fibers in the same direction. So in turn,
Now what we can get is a product we use to spin. Now, it's called Rolag if it's used with carton paddles, roving if you buy it from a manufacturer. This is our next process. This is, of course, is our spinning wheel, and what this will, it'll turn our wool into, if we wind it real tightly, we can turn it into thread, or if we don't wind it so tightly, we can turn it into yarn. If you've ever seen like rope before, it's the same process. We're spinning those fibers together, so therefore it gives it more strength. Now, of course, you have your flywheel, which is the big wheel. Then we have our spool here, and our spool is connected to our spindle, and this whole area right here is called mother of all. The way this works is like a pulley system. This big wheel, every time it spins one time, you know, this is a smaller pulley, so therefore this one spins a lot more than this one does. So if we think about revolutions, this one may turn 1 revolution where this one may turn 30 revolutions, and that just makes it a little bit more efficient. Now what we need to do is we need to draw this off of this wool that we had carded. So to start with, what we'll do is we'll get our spinning wheel going. And what I'm doing now is I'm just slowly feeding this in. And what it's doing is it's twisting those fibers. So if you see right here, it's twisting those fibers. Now we can spin it really, really thin to make thread, or we can take that and ply them together. And that is what we make yarn with. You know, we talked about before, it looks like rope. If you see this yarn, see how it's woven all together? It's just kind of twisted. And so that's what we would, how we produce a yarn. But first, let's talk about thread. What do we do with thread? Our fabric, you know, as from women's dresses to men's shirts to jackets, they're all gonna be made on a machine called a loom. Now, if you operated this loom, you would have been a weaver, and that's for good reason. So to start with, we run hundreds of strands of threads in this direction through the machine. And then depending on the pattern of fabric, how we're gonna, the different patterns on this fabric is determined by how we weave another piece of thread through here. So depending on the pattern, we'll weave them back and forth all the way to the end, slam the shuttle down, start from that end and come our way back. And we just keep doing that crisscross pattern until we eventually come up with fabric. Now, once we have fabric, we can make dresses, we can make shirts. Your favorite winter coats will be made with that thread. Next, let's talk about yarn. So we've already plied this yarn together, and this gives us a gorgeous color. This is the time you'd want to dye it. So on this color here, this is a lighter brown. It was used for black walnut. A winter hat. This one was made, dyed with cochineal, which is bud of a beetle. That's right, bud of a beetle. That's where we get cochineal from, or beautiful indigo. And what we will do is we will knit that yarn together to make clothing. So our winter hat, this would be a fine example of using yarn to make clothes. Our socks, which I find this one to be quite lovely. Finally, our mittens. Who doesn't love a good pair of mittens, especially considering it's getting cold now? So now you see the different steps it takes from shearing a sheep, to washing that wool, to carding it, to spinning it, to either making fabric or knitting it into gloves. That gives you all the steps it takes from turning wool into clothes. I hope you have a new appreciation for all the hard work early Americans took into making their clothes. And next time you put on your favorite winter hat or your favorite pair of wool mittens, just remember, from field to clothes, sheep are what we wear. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you real soon.